What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here, PackersNews.com. Late on Friday afternoon, day 3 of the Scouting Combine in the books here in Indianapolis. Thought I'd jump on for a little bit, see what's on your minds. Not a whole lot of Packers news coming out today, but the QBs talked, the tight ends, some wide receivers. We heard from a bunch of guys. The workouts began. Some guys helped themselves, some guys hindered themselves, so to speak, as far as their draft stock goes, and we'll see what the next couple days bring. I'm going to be leaving tomorrow morning, but they still have yet to have the quarterbacks and wide receivers work out. I believe that happens tomorrow. The defensive backs will roll in here on Sunday, and obviously the Packers and Packers fans will be interested to see what happens there. I'll be continuing to watch everything on television, still be chatting with you guys throughout the process, but today is my last day in Indy. Thanks for joining, man. Sean, how are you? Manu, I actually did not ask Ridley about Green Bay. That was somebody else. But his response, as you are probably alluding to, I put up on Twitter, somebody asked him if he thought he'd be a good fit in Green Bay, and he made it pretty clear he thinks he would fit anywhere. Although he did add a caveat a little bit later that he could go anywhere with a good quarterback, and he'd be all right, which is kind of an odd thing to say. But I do think he would. He's going to tear it up in the NFL. Hello to everyone saying hello. Sorry I can't say hi to all of you. Jeff says, couldn't have picked up Quinn, in reference to Robert Quinn being traded to the Miami Dolphins. Probably not, since the Miami Dolphins are now taking on his $12 million cap hit. That's not exactly a recipe for success in Green Bay. They're hovering around $20 million under the cap prior to signing Aaron Rodgers. We'll see how that contract structure most likely creates room, actually, in the cap in 2018. But Robert Quinn's a talented guy. He's much more of a prototypical 4-3 defensive end, though, and not really the kind of guy I would expect them to be looking at. But he's talented. He's obviously a great pass rusher. He got 8.5 sacks last year. Tons more pressure after that. So, yeah, Robert Quinn, could he have helped the Packers? Yeah, absolutely. But at that price point, seems a little steep. Everybody, my wife is here watching. Hello, Carolyn, darling. Nice to see you. Are you excited about? Sorry, guys. These questions go so fast. Quinn is not 25 anymore. Sean, that's another good point. He is getting up there. He's been in the league a long time. I remember talking to Tom Crabtree about trying to block him on that turf when they were still playing in St. Louis. He's been around a while. The Dolphins are obsessed with expensive defensive linemen. You got that right. Orlando Brown, I saw someone mention, I don't think he's going to kill his draft stock, because I still think he's going to go in the first round, but he's absolutely going to give teams pause with the poor bench press numbers. And now today during the workouts, he ran extremely slow. And I saw Matt Miller, my old buddy there at Bleacher Report, reporting that he was yelled at by one of the coaches there on the field for loafing around. This is your job interview in front of 32 teams, and you're getting yelled at for loafing? That is a whole lot of red flaggage right there. So I still think his talent and tape gets him drafted in the first round, but we could see him drop a little bit. Are the Packers going to re-sign Richard Rodgers? I did see my good friend Rob Domofsky reported, I believe yesterday, that the Packers and Rodgers are talking here at the Combine. I think it makes a lot of sense. Just remember that bringing Richard Rodgers back into the fold doesn't necessarily automatically mean that he's going to be there on the 53-man roster in September. They could very easily bring him in and then draft somebody and get somebody in free agency and ultimately deem him expendable. But it's a smart move if they can get him at their number. He's a guy who knows the system, has some of the best hands on the team. He's not the most explosive guy, but he's a red zone weapon, and you can count on him. And he contributes on special teams. So, like I said, if you can get him at your number, a team-friendly deal, which you got to think is most likely to happen, it's absolutely the smart play to bring him back. Let's see. Is Williams better than Lacey was? Oh, that's a really good question. I think Lacey had better vision. I think Williams is probably a little bit better in pass protection. They're probably about equal catching the ball out of the backfield, although I'd probably give Lacey the uptick there. I think his first 2 years, I would have given Lacey the nod, but right now, Jamal Williams is a much better runner than Lacey was his last year and a half in Green Bay, no doubt about that. and he can catch the Hail Mary. Will Cobb leave Green Bay? No. Would you like to see picked first for the Packers? Jay, I keep coming back to Vita Vea. I know a lot of people don't like that idea. I think it makes a world of sense. I've talked about it ad nauseum here. I think Josh Jackson makes a lot of sense if he falls to 14. I don't think he's going to. Harold Landry is a possibility as an edge rusher. That's something they desperately need. I'm trying to think, I guess if Chubb falls, maybe. I also, I like this talk from Tom Silverstein about, if you listen to Michael and Tom's podcast at PackersNews.com this morning, Tom was talking about the fact that, guards do not go early on in the draft. No matter how great Nelson from Notre Dame may be, it is rare that guards get taken, even in the top 15. If Nelson is there at 14, if he does inexplicably fall that far, I think they need to run the card up. Get that dominating player to help your quarterback on the back nine of his career. Jackson is slow. He's quick enough to, cause disruption, bat balls away and get interceptions. It's fast enough for me. The Packers take Davenport, I quit. Alex, I think that's a little extreme, but yeah, I think he's really polarizing. People either really like him or they don't think he's first-round material at all. I kind of side with the latter portion. BJ Raji, thank you, Brett, for the BJ Raji mention. Were there any linemen that you think are worth it in the late rounds from today's combine? I have to go back and I have everything recorded from the television. The problem when you're actually here is that you get to see so little of the workouts unless you are specifically there in the stadium to watch them, which I am not. I know some guys get to. I'm not on the list, man. The bouncers keep me out, but that's not my thing. I'm not a draft guy, so guys like Matt Miller, DJ, they're the ones in there watching that stuff. So, but I will go back and watch the recording of it just to see some of the workouts. So ask me again next week. Hello from Georgia. Some other reports said Packers are leaders for Sherman, Richard Sherman. I would be very shocked if that were true. He's coming off 2 Achilles surgeries. I can't. It's an Achilles and an ACL, I believe. He's coming off a lot of injuries. He's getting older. He's expensive. I can't imagine the Packers giving up draft capital to go get him. We need a Reggie White clone ASAP. Doesn't everybody? Sherman ain't 25 anymore either. Exactly, Sean. Wilkerson to the Packers, Brenton? It's a possibility just because of his familiarity. Mike Pettin obviously had him on his defense when he was coordinating in New York with the Jets. It's a possibility. You have to think they'll definitely be talking to Pettin about it. I'd probably be surprised because I tend to think he'll get some really decent money somewhere. Talented big men only come free every so often. Obviously, he's got his off-field issues, his kind of effort questions there his last year in New York. So teams will definitely do their due diligence. But I tend to think, yeah, he'll get paid. Saints safety free agency. I know you're talking about Kenny Vaccaro. I tend to doubt they look there. I know people really like Vaccaro. I've never been a huge fan of his game. I think he can be taken advantage of in coverage. He's a big hitter. Obviously, we've all seen the highlight reels there. But I tend to think some team is going to give him a lot of money. You got to remember, there are teams out there with boatloads of cap space. We're talking $70, $80 million worth. So those teams are going to be able to package deals that the Packers just aren't going to be interested in trying to match. James, thanks for joining us, man. Any free agent acquisition predictions for the Packers? Whew, that's a tough one. Really hard to say this far out. I would say they will probably be in on a corner. Now, which corner? That's up for debate. My guess would be Colvin from the Jaguars, but that's just a guess. What about the receiver from Wisconsin? The receiver from Wisconsin? Oh, do you mean the tight end, Fumagalli? We talked to him today. I like him on the third day. I think he'd fit right in. John, you made it to a live show for once. Welcome. Would Sitton be an upgrade from Evans? Yeah, on the playing field, but Sitton's never walking through that door again as long as Mike McCarthy's the coach. That ain't going to happen. Do you think they may draft a quarterback this year? Yes, absolutely. I think they'll probably take one on day 3. I actually just put up a video at PackersNews.com talking with Ryan Wood about that very thing, so make sure you watch that. But yes, I definitely think they are here scouting quarterbacks for the later rounds, and I also think they're going to look at the free agent market to try and bring some veteran experience in to ratchet up the competition at backup quarterback. There's no doubt that they have got to push Brett Hundley, if not push him off to the side. They have got to improve there. McAdoo for tight ends coach. They have a tight ends coach. Melvin from the Colts as cornerback. Jonathan, that is a great idea. I put that as a maybe on my Twitter feed a couple days ago when it was reported that he would be hitting free agency. You know, he obviously lost a few games there at the end of the season to injury, but prior to the injury, he was playing lights out football, and I think he's a little older, so they may not have to exactly pay a premium for him. But again, it's all about who comes after him, and you know, if he prices himself out of the Packers' ability to go put something together for him. But I like him a lot, and I do think that's a guy they probably will look at. Take Nelson at 14 and go get a vet cornerback. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, but Nelson's got to fall. And like I said, I know exactly what Tom was saying as far as guards never being taken in the top 10, but Nelson is a special case. He is a potential once-in-a-lifetime talent at the position. Quite often, those guys will get taken a little bit ahead of the positional norms when it comes to the draft, but you never know. He could fall. And if he does, I think the Packers seriously have to consider taking him. A lot of people asking, I'll say it again, why wouldn't the Packers go after Robert Quinn? Most likely because he has a $12 million cap hit that comes with the trade. And he's a prototypical 4-3 defensive end. Not exactly the kind of guy that Mike Pettin and company would be looking for, although, you know, they made it work with Mario Williams, who had played 4-3 down in Houston back when they ran a 4-3. And he converted to outside linebacker in Pettin's scheme, so it can be done. But, yeah, I don't think Quinn would ever have been a serious consideration in Green Bay. Nelson will definitely be top 10. Josh, see, I agree, except you can never say he'll definitely be anything with the draft. When you're talking about the draft, every year we say, oh, this will never happen, or, oh, this guy's going here. There's no way he gets past this. And it happens every year where teams do stuff we're not even remotely considering. Guys drop that we thought were surefire first-round picks. It happens every single year. So while I agree that he's a top 10 talent and he should be taken there, it's the NFL, man. Anything can happen. Use Ty again on kickoffs, man. I think it's a possibility. You gotta get the ball in his hands. You know, he's clearly not going to be your early down back. Of course, the concern there is the injuries, but he's got to be able to show that he can stay on the field. So, yeah, I think that's a really good idea. Mason Rudolph, Corey, I really like him. He talked today. He said, you know, the foot's fully healed. That kept him out of the Senior Bowl. He's going to do all the work tomorrow. I like him. I think he's probably going to go a little earlier than maybe the Packers would be comfortable selecting a quarterback. But, man, I'd love to see him in the Packers offense and, you know, have some time to sit behind Rodgers and develop because he's an exciting prospect. Can the Pack get Billy Price in the second with his injury? I guess it's possible. I don't see why they would need him, though. They just signed Corey Linsley. Re-signed Corey Linsley. What are the Packers going to do with Hundley? They're going to make him compete for his job, which is exactly what they should be doing. It doesn't make sense to cut him. I know a lot of people just jump right to that, but he's on the last year of his rookie deal. He's dirt cheap. You know, if all hell breaks loose, emergency, everyone gets injured, you can put him in and he can run the offense. Yeah. Is Joe Thomas a free agent? No, I assume you're talking about Cleveland's Joe Thomas. He's recuperating from his injuries and debating whether to play out the last year of his contract. If he plays next year, he'll be playing in Cleveland. Gabriel or Moncrief? Whew, good question. I would probably say Moncrief, except I think he'll probably get priced out of Green Bay's range. I mean, heck, maybe Gabriel will too, but both of them bring the speed that the Packers lack. I tend to think the Packers would probably lean towards Moncrief just because of his ability on the perimeter, which is something they're going to need. Put 20 pounds on Montgomery and play him at a tight end. He can't block as a running back. Now you want to put him in line and make him block defensive ends? No. what is dirt cheap in the NFL? Katie, it's all relative. You know what I mean. Pack up into the top 10. Mark, I guess it's a possibility. They do probably have the ammunition to do it. But it would take a lot to get up there. And, speaking with Gutekunst on Wednesday afternoon during our lunch, he made it clear he's very much of the, he's in the school of it's always better to have more picks, to drop down and collect more swings at the plate, bites at the apple, however you want to describe it. That doesn't mean he wouldn't do it. Maybe if there's someone there he absolutely loves, and say he sees somebody falling that he thinks he can get up and grab, yeah, you can never say never, especially now that we have a general manager with no track record. It's impossible to predict because we just don't know how he's going to operate. So it's kind of what makes it a little exciting. Trade down with Buffalo for 21 and 22. Yeah, I keep seeing that. I guess it's possible, but I don't know. I don't see either team pulling the lever on that one. Do you see the Packers selecting more offensive or defensive players in this draft? I think it'll be a good split. They obviously need the help on defense. We all know that. But you've got to be always, continue to get better on both sides of the ball. They have to, because of the offense they run, they always have to be adding perimeter talent. I think they'll definitely take a wide receiver. Ted Thompson took a wide receiver almost every year he was drafting. So I think Brian Gutekunst will continue that trend. Complimentary picks are, Zach, yes, compensatory picks are now tradable. That started last year. So all the 4 picks that the Packers received as of last week, those are tradable. Raji at tight end. That's right. I think 14 is too good to pass up. I'm thinking Goot grabs a multi-Pro Bowl player at a premier spot. It's possible. You never know. John, with all caps, saying Josh Jackson at 14. I don't think he's going to be there at 14. I think he's going to take it before that, but yeah, he's definitely a possibility. Adam, Tavon Austin to the Packers. I know it was put out there yesterday that he would be either available for trade by the Rams or cut. Now, I don't think the Packers are going to trade for him because he's got like an $8-9 million cap hit. But if he's released, that's somebody they could explore. I don't think he's going to break the bank in free agency, and he's definitely got the speed and the suddenness that the Packers lack at that position. Now, the problem is you've already got Randall Cobb, who does a lot of the stuff that Tavon Austin does. So while I tend to doubt it, I do think that's a call that they'll make and see if they can get him on a cheap deal. Maybe they pull the trigger. I just assume anyone who mentions trading Rodgers is under the influence. Safe assumption. All right, guys, I got 1 or 2 more. Gilbert Brown is a nutritionist. That's one of the funniest things I've ever read. Nick Burnett. There's been no news on Burnett. I tend to think he's going to hit the market. I can't imagine they're going to be able to afford to keep him around. He's probably going to make around $10 million a year if he does hit free agency. And I don't see the Packers paying that. Not for a guy on his 3rd contract who his body's starting to break down. He's a very good player when he's on the field, but he hasn't been able to stay on the field as of recently. So I would expect Morgan Burnett to move on unless the Packers can convince him to take a team-friendly deal, which is always a possibility. Any chance Green Bay picks a running back early? I tend to doubt it, but you never know. If they think there's a special guy there, the USC back hurt himself today running in the 40, so maybe he falls and they see some value there. But I tend to doubt it. I think they'll continue down kind of the path that Ted Thompson always wore, where, obviously a perfect example is Eddie Lacy. Eddie Lacy was a guy they had a 1st-round grade on, and he fell into the 2nd round, and they took him because the value was so good. If that kind of thing happened, I could see them taking a running back on day 2, but I tend to think they'll look elsewhere. All right, everybody, I'm going to take off. I'm sorry if I couldn't get to your question. They do come rather fast, but make sure you're checking PackersNews.com for all the latest. Like I said, I leave for home tomorrow, but I'll continue to kind of update you guys throughout the weekend, throughout the entire process of the Combine. Make sure you're checking PackersNews.com for all the latest. You guys have a great weekend.